I don't know about you, but for me, the greatest temptation is the desire to be good. Now, we don't often think about temptation and good in the same context. Temptation is often about bad desires and bad choices. And good is normally the opposite of temptation. When we're tempted, though, we should make good choices. Yet our desire for good can actually hinder us from God. Most of the people I know, they're pretty good people. I mean, they're not perfect. They make mistakes. They make bad choices and have bad experiences. It's probably you, some level. Yet, even when you're bad, you're good. You understand you're wrong and you try to make things right. The people I know, they love and they give and they serve. They help others and don't demand for themselves what could be rightfully theirs. Like, this is my right, I need to get this. Tend not to be the case. Tend to be pretty good people. Joseph plays a minor role in the Christmas story. That's not really a shot at him. If you think about it, men tend to play a minor role in the birth process. Like, my job when our kids were born was to shut up and stay out of the way. That was it. That was and hold the camera when the doctor would let me. So when a husband and a wife each tell their perspective of their child's birth, they often tell those totally differently, drastically different tales. The wife expends great detail to tell of the roller coaster that is birth, the nuances of it all. Men tend to talk about waiting, eating, and then a baby was born. It was like, hey, it's great. And this is actually illustrated in the New Testament. The Gospel of Luke tells the Christmas story from Mary's perspective, and the Gospel of Matthew tells the same story from the vantage point of Joseph. And it takes Luke 132 verses to tell it, and Matthew tells it in 8. Yet in those 8 verses, Joseph's dilemma is seen, and this is where it hits us. See, prior to a miraculous visitation from an angel in a dream, Matthew tells us that when Joseph found out Mary was pregnant, he could have shamed her, and instead he chose to divorce her quietly. Now, both choices were legitimate options. The former would have justified Joseph in the eyes of his friends and his family. You ever tempted to do that? It would have protected his reputation and allowed him to get out of his relationship with Mary in the easiest way possible. The latter was a more risky option. To divorce Mary quietly was allowed by the law, but would cause many to doubt his sincerity. Why did he divorce her? What's his deal? Isn't he a covenant guy? Doesn't he, he couldn't figure out the love languages? His reputation would have taken a huge hit if he did that. So it was the right thing to do, but it would have come with a cost. Then the angel appears in a dream, and Joseph had an even more difficult decision. Think about it. Rather than choosing between shaming Mary and divorcing her quietly, now he had to choose between his way, a quiet divorce, and God's way, marrying the girl. And he chose God's way, but notice what it cost him. For Joseph, his identity was likely built on his ability to be good, right? He was a religious, righteous man who wanted to do right. Not only would he like to be good, but he would also, and this is us, he wants to appear good as well, because that's important. His decision to divorce Mary quietly shows a willingness in him to personally suffer in order to give the appearance of nobility and righteousness. See, Joseph likely believed God would love him as long as he was good. He felt safe in his own goodness, in a sense. Yet, notice the demand of the angel. He asked Joseph to do something which others would consider not good. To marry the pregnant woman would be actually scandalous because they knew it wasn't his. If it was his, there was a problem because they're not married yet. In a tight religious community, that's a massive problem. So religious leaders would call him heretical. His family would claim he was taking responsibility for things that weren't his fault. His community would literally ostracize him, guys, for making bad choices. The angel asked Joseph not just to give up his goodness, but also to lose his appearance of goodness before others. When Joseph awoke from the dream, he had to choose between appearing good to others or obeying God. Think about that for your own life. We often face a similar choice. One of the greatest temptations we face is to trust in our own goodness, believing that God loves good people. We think that as long as we're good or appear good, we're safe with God and with others. Yet the way of Jesus is not always seen as good. Obeying Jesus in this world may be seen as the opposite of good, even by religious people. Yet we're called to obey. Here's the question. Are you willing to sacrifice your appearance as a good person in order to obey Jesus?